Good morning, everybody, and welcome to my session, Juggling is Not an Option, How to Reduce Stress, Take Care of Yourself, and Set Boundaries with Students and in Your Life. My name is Wendy Sweeney, and I am the manager for PANDA. We provide physical and non-apparent disability assistance throughout the state of Minnesota for adult basic education. I first want to mention our website, our fabulous website. We just got a new logo and we did change our tagline from Minnesota ABE Disability Specialists to Physical and Non-Apparent Disability Assistance to go along with our acronym. So if you have not checked out our website, I highly encourage you to do so. It was developed for Minnesota Adult Ed, and we have all kinds of information about various disabilities, including classroom strategies and community resources. So let's talk about what we will be discussing today. I'm going to be giving you an overview of how the COVID pandemic has impacted mental health. Obviously, it's impacted many of us. And then I'm going to talk about ways to reduce stress. And we will be talking about how to set boundaries with students and also within your life. And then I will be talking about some self-care strategies and giving you some community mental health resources. All right, so let's start with talking about all of the pressures of teaching and learning. I'm curious to know if you wouldn't mind just popping in the chat box what everybody's role is in adult ed. I know I'm talking to support services. So many of you are working in offices. Some of you might be program managers. Some of you might be teachers. I'm just curious to know who's in the audience today. So if you could just introduce yourself quickly, that would be helpful. Looks like we have some teachers in the audience, teaching assistants, clerk, director, so like a real variety. Okay. Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to kind of generally talk about all these pressures that have been impacting many of us in the last, 18 months? How many months has it been? I don't even know anymore. Obviously, all these ever increasing and evolving school and world changes. We've had, obviously, COVID, social unrest, a lot of school district and program changes that have been changing and evolving ever since March 2020. And this has just added a lot of pressure. A lot of people have had to jump to teaching online and then back in person. And I'm sure all your programs have had differing instructional models over the course of the last 18 months. And then we had people working from home, obviously, that included a lot of isolation and juggling many different roles. Whether you have kids at home or you're having internet changes, less interactions with others, and we all need that community and workplace interactions with others, and we miss that so much. And then a lot of the teaching online, juggling, having to learn all these different technology changes and how do we reach students and how do we get them devices. And now this fall, a lot of programs are transitioning back to in-person or hybrid or continuing to be teaching online. Some are doing high flex, which is the teaching and teaching both in person and online, which I know can be incredibly challenging as well. Sorry, doesn't seem like my thing is working here. Just a minute. There we go. Then the student challenges, lots of barriers for our students. Maybe they have children at home. They have just their barriers that they have to begin with employment and support and getting financial challenges, lack of internet access or not having devices. These have all added up over time. So here's the thing, juggling does not work well for our brains. We really crave that predictability, safety, knowing what to expect. And that has just been going on for so long, it's starting to wear many of us down. And it can be quite exhausting and stressful. So obviously it has raised anxiety and stress for us. And when that's going on, when we're kind of looking for the danger of, now we're having all these breakthrough infections, we're in this fight or flight mode, which is really our brain's way of surviving any major danger. And this can be dangerous. We know that COVID is a dangerous virus and has caused a lot of deaths. So when you are in that heightened alertness, your fight or flight is ongoing, and that can really wear down your physical and mental health. Or maybe a lot of what ifs going on in your mind. What if this never ends? What if we go back to being all virtual if we're in person? A lot of what ifs, and fear is what is driving all of this anxiety and stress. So it's kind of, I think part of this is being able to accept the fact that abnormal is our new normal. There's a lot of talk about everything going back to normal, and maybe we need to just start accepting the fact that we may never go back to the old ways, that this is the new normal is somewhat abnormal. So these recurring changes, like I had said, are extremely wearing, extremely tiring, and people tend to either act out or act in, and that's what I've really been observing. A lot of behaviors that have been occurring, and this could be happening with your students, with your coworkers, or yourself. So acting in might be just really suppressing it and holding things in, but then it comes out sideways, maybe with some more impatience, maybe eating more, drinking more. But it just really suppressing is never very healthy. And on the other hand, there's some acting out that is also not very healthy, where you are hearing about road rage incidences and people acting out on airlines, lots of anger and feelings of some injustice. And I've already mentioned that fatigue and being overwhelmed, it's just very, very common right now. So let's take a minute to do a little activity. Like I said, it's important we don't suppress, but it's also important we're not just full on angry either. And so I think it's really important to express feelings in a healthy way. And so I'd like each of you to share in the chat box, if you're comfortable, one feeling you have regarding the challenges from the last 18 months, and knowing that all feelings are valid no matter what they are. It's better to get it out than to hold it in. So let's take a minute for you to share a feeling. And Susan, I forgot to mention the handout. Did you put the link to the handout in the chat box?
I did.
Okay.
At the beginning, but I'm happy to put it back in again if people didn't get it the first time.
I forgot to mention it in the beginning. I apologize, but there is a handout. It's optional if you'd like to to print it up that has everything I'm going to be talking about. You just fill in the blanks. It's a closed worksheet. It has a few of the links that we'll be talking about as well. You getting any feelings in the chat box, Susan?
Yes, we are. And they're very similar to what you might expect. Overwhelmed, uncertain, burnt out, exhausted, frantic. Nancy put an emoji in that looks like, I'm not quite sure what that's supposed to be, Nancy, but it's definitely not positive. Noah says social isolation. A couple of folks are feeling discombobulated or disconnected, tired, burned out, frustrated, restless, impatient, uncertain, anxious. Yeah, scared, ambivalent. Not a lot of positivity in the text chat, I gotta say.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing. And, you know, I completely can relate. It's this, I think the longer this pandemic has continued, the lower everybody's tolerance is for it. So we're going to talk about some tips to reduce that fatigue and burnout. The first thing is to keep things in perspective. I know easier said than done, right? But if you think back to March 2020, when we just completely had shelter in place, we had to be stuck in our homes, we couldn't go to restaurants, we couldn't see people. And now we are out and about more, although now it seems like we're kind of taking a dive back with Minnesota, especially being with high rates of positivity with COVID. But we have made a lot of progress. We do have a vaccine. Now it looks like boosters are going to be coming out. So just trying to keep things in perspective, like pulling back and looking at the big picture. And then secondly, really trying to focus on today. We don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, and we have to live one day at a time. So pulling yourself back and really just putting your energy into today. Seeking credible information. There's so much information in our world right now. That's overwhelming all in itself. And how do you decipher what's truthful and what's not truthful? This is obviously a real added stress in everybody's life. So really peering back, being kind of like, the way I think about it is how we're inundated with commercials all the time. And we have to decipher, is this a real product that I would purchase, or is this a bunch of malarkey? So it's kind of that same kind of ability to decipher whether something is truthful or not. And it's not easy to determine for sure. And because the pandemic is evolving constantly and changing, the information is changing along with it, which doesn't help us. But it's just the way it is, I guess. We just have to be persistent with that. Obviously, continuing to use those safety measures so we don't lose the progress we've made, which requires persistence and patience. And we all have to continue to have hope. We have to hang on to hope. Let's talk about some more tools to reduce stress generally. I really think it's important to start your day being grounded in some way. So whether this is for yourself or this is something you do with your students, I think for both, for those of you who are teaching, just starting the day with some calming activity, whether it's just playing some calming music, doing some deep breathing, maybe a short little meditation, something to just kind of ground the day, because if you're feeling stressed, your students are also feeling stressed. And so just starting that day with something calming is something to think about doing. Being mindful of our thoughts. Our thoughts impact how we feel, and we are constantly having this dialogue in our minds. We all have them, and sometimes it's very conscious, sometimes it's quite unconscious. But paying attention to some of those thoughts when you start feeling low and overwhelmed, like, what was I just thinking about? What is going on? and then challenging and reframing them to be more truthful, because oftentimes our thoughts are not very truthful for ourselves. And then having, this is another thing you can do with students every day with that check-in, starting the day with the calming activity, but then having a check-in, like, how are you feeling today? Just doesn't have to be super involved. You can use emojis or feeling words. Let's just share one feeling, so they have a way of also expressing, and you can kind of read the barometer of what's happening with students. But expressing feelings is so important. I'm really a true believer, and if you don't have somebody to express it to do some journaling, this is also something you could do with students, some writing activities too. Another tool is quite simple, but something that I think is so important when we're feeling so overwhelmed and we're just constantly seeing a lot of negativity in our lives, when there's actually good things happening all around us every day. And so when you can train your brain to start looking for more of the positives rather than focusing on the negatives, it can really change your mindset. So just writing 2 positive things that occur every day, whether you just jot them down or you think about it, try to get in the habit of doing it. This can be really quite positive as well and helpful. And then lastly, focusing on what you can control. We really, so many of things going on in our world, we don't have a lot of control over. And this is an activity I do with my clients in my mental health practice quite regularly. It's very simple, but can be incredibly powerful, is determining and writing down what can you control, what can't you control. This is something you can also do with students. So we are going to do that right now. We're going to go into a breakout here for about 5 minutes. And what I would like you to do with your breakout group is to jot down those things you can control and those things you cannot control. And the purpose of this activity is to try to release the things you cannot and put your energy into those things you can control. So let's use this time to use COVID as our example. What can you control and what can't you control with the COVID pandemic? So we're all going to go into a breakout right now. And when you come back, we can share.
All right, thanks, Wendy. I'm going to pause the recording and start the breakout rooms.
Okay. All right, everyone. I hope you got a chance to try this. The group I went into, we ended up talking about some challenges at Minneapolis North Campus, where they had to move because of some gun violence around them. So we talked more about that. But again, the things, when there's so many things in our lives with the uncertainty that we talked about in our group, that that uncertainty that just fuels anxiety and stress when you don't really have control over so much of it. So what I'd like you to share in the chat box is, tell me one thing you can control in regard to COVID. What is one thing you can control?
And Wendy, did you want me to call out some of the answers?
Yes, please.
All right, so we were getting a number of things here, including pacing yourself, getting your vaccination or your booster, how you react to the outbursts of others, social distancing, your daily routine, whether you wear a mask, how you spend your break time, thoughts and perceptions to stimuli. Again, mask wearing, my actions and reactions, being nice to people, control your attitude and your actions. Again, masking is another one. The choice of how to protect yourself.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. Those were all fabulous things. I hope everyone was listening to those things. And it is how we react, what we do, our perspectives, our thoughts, these are all things we can control. So trying to put more of your energy there is a really great way to reduce stress. So let's just talk briefly about setting boundaries. This is another strategy that really can help us have a semblance of normalcy, and it also helps students, reduces the chaos and anxiety for them as well. So somebody mentioned that in the chat box, that daily routine. So whether you're a teacher or working in the office, having some kind of a routine that you can stick with on a regular basis can really work to reduce that stress. Just gives us some grounding around it. The same with at home, keeping a daily routine as much as you possibly can. Starting and stopping work at the same time is one way of setting boundaries for yourself, or starting your classroom at the same time and stopping at the same time, taking breaks at the same time, keeping your schedule similar as much as possible. And then setting those clear expectations and rules. A lot of times people think that you don't need to do this with adults, but actually we all need rules. That's why we have speed limits and why we have stop signs and stop lights. We need to know what's expected, and having those rules helps really clarify what those expectations are. So really thinking about what you will and will not tolerate in the classroom or in your office. What are the things that are important? Is it to, setting those rules then and then posting them? It's just being respectful, not talking over others. What do you do with cell phones? What happens if you're late or you miss class? All those things are really helpful. And then setting some boundaries in your personal life. Dropping some of these balls that you're juggling is another way we need to be looking at these things. So seeking that work-life balance. Some thoughts around that is just, number one, really paying attention to when you are feeling overwhelmed and stressed. A lot of you mentioned you already are. So what's fueling it? Really kind of taking stock of what's fueling it. Is it dissipating? Is it some triggers that really set you off, whether it's seeing somebody who's unmasked or somebody who's not vaccinated or somebody who's rude to you, whatever it might be, kind of being aware of what those are, and then deciding how much is too much. How much bandwidth do you have in your day? And some people have more, some people have less. Really making that decision about when to not take any more on, and knowing that this is my limit. So kind of taking a personal inventory of when you know you're stressed and when you know it's just too much, then you know you need to do some things. And here's what you can do. One is to say no. We need to say no more often. And it's very hard for people in the helping profession to say no, because we want to help people, right? But this is a really important skill to have, to say no to obligations, to know when it's too much. If you're asked to join a committee, for instance, or to do a workshop, or to take on one more extra added responsibility in the office, rather than knee-jerking yes, which is like what most people do. They just a knee-jerk a yes, and then they regret it after the fact. And so what I always recommend as a way to say no when it's hard for you to say no is to use a time-buying phrase to give you time to think about if you want to do whatever it might be, that obligation, or even if it's fun, even if it's going out, do I really want to do this? And so, for instance, a time-buying phrase would be, let me check my schedule and I'll get back to you. And rehearse it, rehearse it, rehearse it. Come up with fun. Let me let me see, I gotta see how much I have going on and I'll let you know. I need to check my calendar, whatever it might be. But that gives you some time to really analyze, is this gonna be too much to put on my plate? Asking others for help. This is so important, both at work and at home when you're overwhelmed. And again, because you're in the helping profession, it's hard to ask others for help because you're the helper, right? But it's very important when you know it's too much, asking either a coworker at work or at home, asking your kids or your spouse, I need some help. I need some help around the house. I need help with chores. I need you to help with a meal, whatever it might be. Do not work for free. I say this a lot, but it's hard right now with all these added things going on and transitioning and all that that's happening. But it's work. Work is work, and you need your life. Your life is more important. We work for money, and we hopefully we enjoy what we do, but we need to pay attention to having balance in our life as well. And answering those calls and emails at designated times, I think can be a real way of reducing stress, particularly for teachers and office staff, where maybe you have a couple hour time slot in your routine where you answer calls and emails and then you don't for the rest of the day. Maybe you check it at the end of the day. But having a designated time kind of alleviates the constant interruptions that can happen, particularly in the workplace.
And Wendy, you had asked for a 10-minute time check. So that is now, just letting you know.
Oh, wow. Okay, 10 minutes. All right, so let's just take a minute to, thank you for that, Susan. Take a minute to share in the chat box, what's one way you will set boundaries in your life? Please share. We getting any chats, Susan?
Yep, they are starting to come in. I think people were writing longer things. It took a little bit of time. Pausing before saying yes, saying no to extras asked of me. I personally have been working on not checking my email on my phone after hours. That's a tough one because it's right there on top of it's like on the home screen of my phone, right? Using the tip about checking my calendar, when being asked to do something instead of immediately saying yes. Jamie shared something I already do is keep an Excel sheet of my hours worked at home so that I don't go over my hours. Sherry or Cherry says, note my energy level, then make commitments from there. I'm going to start blocking out time on my schedule for self-care. Greg is saying the phrase, let me check my schedule and get back to you. Yvonne is just saying no. All others saying be sensible and sensitive, take time with family, no social gatherings, not responding to every request, put my phone away for the evening, spend more time with my dog, more walks, ignore the phone and focus on self-care.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. And many of you mentioned self-care. Perfect segue. Self-care is very, very important right now. Please be kind to yourself. Please give yourself some grace. This is something we've never dealt with in our life. And the longer it goes on, the harder it's getting. So please be kind to yourself. I'm going to talk about a few ways you can increase some self-care. First is the physical self-care. Most of you are very aware of this. That's kind of been hammered into our brains forever, it seems. But getting some exercise, and that exercise doesn't have to be 30 to 60 minutes. And that sometimes then for me, I know that's really hard for me to get into my day all the time. So just even if it's just running up and down the stairs or doing a few jumping jacks, getting even a few minutes of exercise raises endorphins and does help us feel better generally. But yoga, meditation, getting good sleep, moderation is always important with food and drink. And then we have the social emotional self-care, which is often not thought of as much. And so I want to emphasize this a little bit more. First is find a vent buddy, somebody you trust, somebody who's not going to try to fix things, who you can just kind of release in a healthy manner your daily challenges, frustrations, good things too, but sharing with somebody that you trust and then reciprocating, letting them vent as well. This, is important for not just ourselves, but our community. And so kind of paying attention to that. If you don't have somebody that you would feel comfortable doing this with, then journaling is a very safe way. You want it to be a safe place. Just journaling every day, your frustrations. So you have a release, getting it out of your head and on paper is very, very powerful. Getting in the habit of doing some deep breathing. There's a ton of different deep breathing exercises out there, but it's a way of calming you physically and mentally. And the one that I always recommend, I call 624, and it's just breathing in for a count of 6, holding for 2, and breathing out for a count of 4. So I want everyone to do that right now. Breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold 1, 2. Out 1, 2, 3, 4. And the key to this is doing it 5 times. So if you can get in that habit when you're going to bed, if you're starting to feel that stress, paying attention to it, deep breathing really is a simple, easy thing you can do. When you're feeling impatient, count to 10 before you react. Try as hard as you can not to react, which can be difficult when you're emotional. When our emotions are high, it's our rational brain is taking a snooze. It's not engaging. It's all emotions and it just floods. I'm sure you've all had that where you're just angry and you just flood with frustration. Count to 10, go for a quick walk, run up the stairs, whatever you can do to calm down before you react. Try the calming room. This is a great website. Not sure we have time to look at it right now, but the link is in your in the handout. It's through ASIA area schools, and I really like it because it has music. You could use music. It has sounds like beaches, harp playing. It has meditation. It has a ton of deep breathing, other deep breathing exercises. Checking in with your coworkers, your friends and family. Like I said, this is a community. We have to check in with each other, make sure everybody's doing okay. That stress is just quite prevalent amongst many, many people. So by reaching out to them, you're helping yourself as well by having that check-in. Paying attention and really celebrating those wins every day. Like I said, there's some positive things happening every day. So the things that go well, trying really to pay attention to that, and training our brains to really focus more on the positives rather than the negatives. Laughing, best medicine ever. I'm a big lover of laughter, whether you watch a comedy show or something on Netflix, something that makes you laugh, tell a joke, play games, lighten things up. And then very important to take some time to rejuvenate at the end of every day. I ask my husband for space when I get home from work, or even if I'm working at home and coming down, I need my space. I need time to decompress, just to rejuvenate. And I would really highly encourage you to do that as well. But seek mental health therapy if it's needed. There's no shame in asking for help. It's actually a strength, not a weakness, to ask for some help if you need it and you need some objective person to give you some tools in your toolbox. We all have tools and coping strategies that we use. I'm sure you have many of them. I hope you got a few things from my session today, but if you do need that extra support, I highly encourage you do it. Many school districts have employee assistance programs where you can get sessions with a therapist, free sessions. They're usually 3 to 6, depending on what your package is and your health. Take advantage of it. Even your family can use these EAP sessions. So making you aware of that. Otherwise, you can obviously go to a mental health provider through your health insurance as well. There's a lot of 24/7 free hotlines, lots of self-help books out there, ton of cell phone apps that help reduce stress and anxiety, and then also lots of websites. I'm going to take you to our website here to show you quickly here before we end our session. I want to show you in our website here at PANDA, and the way you find this is you go down to mental health, the mental health category, and then you go to resources. Okay, and I've got tons of resources in this category, but the one I really want to point out, gobs of information here, probably too overwhelming. So going to the second paragraph and clicking at the here button here, it will download a Word document that you can print up and have handy for your students, for yourself, for your family, however you want to use it. Let's see, why can't I access it? Oh, wanted to show you some of the things in here.
And Wendy, we are at time, so I'm not sure if you wanted us to do the evaluation poll. We should probably do that.
Yes, okay. Sorry, I can't pull it up, but if you click on that, it has 24/7. It's kind of a summary. It's not so overwhelming. It has cell phone apps in it. It has sliding fee scale, mental health clinics, books, all kinds of information. And it's just a page and a half, I believe, or 2. But that's for you to print up on your own. I would encourage you to print that up for yourselves. So it looks like we are out of time. It always goes so quickly. See here.
Pause the recording or stop the recording, and then we'll bring up your evaluation poll. Is that what you'd like me to do?
Yes, please. So if everybody would just take a quick poll before we end here. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm here for you. And for anything you might need for yourself or your students, reach out to my email or give me a call.